My Lords, supporting British farmers and boosting the nation's food security are key priorities. Our reformed SFI offer will open later this month, and our Elm Capital Grants offer opens next month. We will continue to work with stakeholders through the new Farming and Food Partnership Board, and we will publish our response to the Farming Profitability Review and our 25-year farming roadmap later this year, and that will set out the government's long-term vision for farming.
I'm grateful to the Noble Lady for that reply, but of course environmental schemes do not put food on the table. Will she take this opportunity to set out how the government intends to put the focus back onto food production and farming, in particular to boost the productivity of farms in the uplands and tenanted farms? And what specific measures is she intending to take to boost the food security and self-sufficiency so desperately needed at home, and the ability of our farmers to compete internationally away from home?
Well, clearly, profitability is really important, which is why the Batters Review was so important. As part of increasing profitability, we are already implementing some of the recommendations from that review. As I say, our full response will be arriving later this year, and we will look at what else we can do. It's really important that we work closely with farmers, but also processors, other producers, horticultural sector. There are a number of areas where it's really important we look at what we can do to increase profitability, and also on trade and ability of our farmers to export, because obviously that makes a big difference. And clearly the SBS agreement that we are looking at negotiating at the moment will also support that.
Agree that true food security cannot exist without climate resilience. Considering the recent severe weather disruptions to UK crop yields, will the government's priorities in this parliamentary session include a legally binding good food bill to formalise national self-sufficiency targets alongside nature restoration metrics? And if not, why not?
Well, I'm sure the Noble Lady is aware that there was no good food bill announced in the King's speech this time, and I can't presume to guess what's going to be in the next King's speech. But clearly, resilience to climate change is absolutely critical. And from different perspectives, we know that farmers struggle when we have severe flooding. We know that drought and wildfire risk is also a real problem. And so improving resilience for farming to both very dry and very wet weather are absolute priorities for the government. So we have invested a record 2.65 billion in flood defences, for example, and that will include supporting farmers as well. And the environmental land management schemes also will allow for grants to look at some of the impacts of climate change.
Crossbench.
Would the government consider extending the SFI payments to cover farmers growing leguminous crops, in other words, beans? This fixes nitrogen in the soil, makes the soil more healthy. They can't get fertilisers at the moment because of the Straits of Hormuz blockage, and also this is the way we want our diets to go. And at the moment, there's not much money in it for farmers to plant these kind of crops, and this would be a massive step towards both combating climate change, etc., and improving health.
Yeah, I mean, the Noble Lady makes a very good point, and I think anything that can help us to make our farming sector more secure, particularly when we've seen the impacts of the war in the Middle East on fertiliser, for example. I know that the Farming Minister, Angela Eagle, is looking at ways to continue to improve the SFI offer, and I will take the Noble Lady's suggestions back to her.
My Lords, it pays to persevere. Does my noble friend, the Minister, acknowledge the very real contribution in the farming industry of the upland farmers? Not least, for example, Kevin Glad in the lovely land of Wales, the Pennine farmers, the many uplands in Scotland, and the Cheviots, for example. And this community secures, in many ways, the environment of much of Britain. And they face many challenges now, not least climate change. And I know that my noble friend, the Minister, does she acknowledge how important she sees the environment. And this community across Britain does a great deal to help and should be acknowledged and rewarded.
Well, I can absolutely reassure my noble friend that the uplands are very close to my heart. My mother's family were upland farmers in Wales, in fact, and I currently live in Cumbria. So the issues around upland farming is something that I know very, very well. The SFI offer that's coming forward is going to include 7 moorland actions. I know not all uplands are moorlands, but it will help, and payment rates will be increased. We're also working very closely. I've had very constructive meetings with Dr. Hilary Cosham, who's looking at a new approach and actually working very much from the ground up in upland communities, working with communities, bringing them together. We are looking at pilots first in Dartmoor and then in Cumbria, because we know that it is a challenging landscape to farm in, and we want to support the best we can.
The government announced this 25-year roadmap for farming plan in November 24. That's 18 months ago. Now, the noble Baroness has said it's going to happen this year. So when exactly might we see it in 2026? And will DEFRA now stand up for British agriculture against Treasury and government attacks, where farm closures are at a record level, and 51% of our farmers are simply thinking of giving up and leaving? When will the government realise that supporting farming, our farmers and food is good for Britain? That should be the principal aim of any 25-year farming plan.
Well, part of the reason we decided to do a 25-year farming plan is to work with farmers and rural communities to ensure that they have some kind of certainty, they have some sort of security for the future, because there just simply hasn't been enough of that in recent years. So we really feel that having that long-term approach that is worked up with farmers, the people who are on the ground and who understand the ways that long-term thinking, that long-term security can really help to support them as businesses, but also our food security for the future.
Does the noble lady accept that the backbone of food production in rural Wales and in many other areas are the small family farms, but that one of the banes of their lives are the red tape levels with which they have to face in undertaking their work? Will the government please review the red tape pressure that is on such farms, both in taxation matters and other matters, so as to lessen this burden and let them get on with what they're best at, producing food?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, my mother's family had a small family farm in Wales, so my uncle actually had to do another job because they couldn't make sufficient money just from the farm. So I know the tough challenges that hill farms in Wales face. Obviously it's a devolved matter. I can reassure him that I spoke regularly in the past to my colleague. I'm looking very much forward to meeting the new Plaid Cymru Minister, and absolutely will continue to work to reduce red tape in whatever way we can for farmers.
My Lords.
Crossbench. It's the turn of the crossbenchers.
Thank you very much. My Lords, bovine TB is one of the most serious challenges facing our cattle farmers in England, so I very much welcome the control strategy announced this morning by the government, which makes a positive step change approach to that control. I haven't seen the details yet, but could I ask the noble Baroness, the Minister, will she confirm that it will enable, first of all, farmers and vets to use new antibody-based sensitive tests to indicate which of their animals is infected, no matter what the official TB status is? Will they be able to have more easy access to data from DEFRA, and will they have freedom to manage out the infection in their herds? If these changes and others that are mentioned are followed, they should help improve animal health and welfare, they should reduce the stress on farmers from having to cull their cattle at regular intervals, and they should provide the farmers with some welcome light at the end of a very dark tunnel.
Yeah, the Noble Lord is asked some very pertinent questions, actually. I'm really pleased that earlier today the code-assigned bovine TB control strategy for England was published. This has been developed and published through the TB Hub website, which, if Noble Lords are interested, I would urge them to have a look at. There's been a steering group of the bovine TB partnerships that's been working on this for some time in order to make sure that we get the next stage of our strategy on tackling bovine TB absolutely right. We're now going to be looking at the detail of the steering group's proposals carefully to see where we go next. The Noble Lord asked a number of very specific questions. My understanding is that we are looking at new tests and implementation and working with vets, but as he asked quite detailed questions about a strategy that's only just been published and I haven't seen the detail of as yet, I would write him with that particular information.